My fellow Rezolvians, welcome back to the channel. Rezolve AI coming under some pressure today. Okay. Second day in a row. Yesterday you closed down about 10%. You're down over 5% today. Yeah, it's a little bit of a weird day out there in markets, but we do have some updates to bring you. From an analyst, reiterated his price target on the stock, which was $10 per share. We have a little bit of an update from Mexico and what Rezolve is actually capable of. So we're going to get into that in today's episode. We're going to talk about something that was highly discussed today in the trading community. If you guys want to join that, check it out. Link down below in the description of today's episode. But, some people even over there are like, hey, Michael, do you plan on holding this stock? And I said yes. Okay. But what we really talked about was the 150 million in ARR this year. Was that including the 70 million from this deal? Or was that not including that? And we're going to talk about it in today's episode. But this could be a deciding factor on what I do with my position in Rezolve. If I buy more, if I sell the stock, or what I plan to do. And I'll explain why it's so important in today's episode. Now, I do want to share with you guys my position also. I haven't done anything with it. It's the same as it was before. But I want to show you guys that as well. Remember, this is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor, so come to your own conclusions, as always. Again, check that link out down below in the description of today's episode if you guys would like to come invest with us. Need a drink of some water. Take a drink of some water, guys. Relax a little bit, okay? Make your decision and live with it, okay? I've made mine for now. And my decision is I'm holding tight here. Okay? I'll tell you again what we talked about in the trading community today was the 2025 ARR guidance. For anyone that does not know, Dan Wagner said that Rezolve is going to update investors on ARR in December. The previous forecast was 150 million. Well, this buyout is of Crown Peak, which I think could be a blockbuster acquisition for the company. Like, it could be really good long-term for the company. But the question a lot of people have is, does the 150 million bake into the prior guidance? Okay. And I think no. Okay. Because, look, we were at 110 million for ARR on the last earnings. Okay. The company says we're going to reach 150 million by the end of 2025. Okay. So if you add 70 million to that, you're looking at 180 million, assuming there was no growth since October 1st, since the last earnings. Okay. That would be a big problem if that's the number we get, 180 million in ARR by the end of this year. Okay. Which again, Dan Wagner and Rezolve said they're going to share an updated ARR with us in December. It could come out any day. There's been a lot of talk about December 3rd. Tomorrow is December 3rd. It might happen tomorrow. It might not. We'll have to see. Okay? But this would be a big, big problem. Because Dan Wagner, every time he went on CNBC Europe, Squawk Box Europe, he went on the Schwab network, he's went on all of these smaller networks, and every time He says this is the age of agentic, e-commerce. Rezolve is leading the way. Rezolve is growing rapidly, right? Things like that. If this were the number we would get, or maybe only 150 million, as some people are fearful of, that would not show the business is organically growing. It would mean the growth has stopped. Okay. Now, as I've talked about before, Rezolve, it would be very hard for me to believe Rezolve would voluntarily, miss or only meet expectations for 2025 ARR early, right? They don't have to share anything until their next earnings. Dan Wagner and Rezolve sharing an updated ARR in December means at minimum, I think they hit 150 million, probably more than that, but at minimum 150 million plus 70 million. Okay, that would represent some organic growth. There's obviously acquisition growth in there. Subsquid and SmartPay, they obviously have some annual recurring revenue. I don't remember off top, exactly what those numbers are, but that would be some organic growth as well in the business. Okay. I added only 70,000 there. Yeah, that would be a big problem. Plus 70 million would be 220 million in ARR for 2025. That is the base case minimum. Anything less than this, and I would start to look at the company, it would start to sound deceptive, right? If Dan Wagner continues to come out and say the business is growing rapidly and blah, 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 and then to get a number less than 220 million, that would be deceptive in my view. And that would be one of the reasons that I would sell the stock or sell part of my position. But again, I keep coming back to, why would Rezolve voluntarily in December share ARR that only meets expectations, which at this point, 220 million is the expectation, right? That is the base case. That is the floor, right? Anything less than 220 million is going to be seen as a miss from a Wall Street perspective. Okay. I would imagine the company probably comes in at like 250 million. Okay. That would be a great sign. That would mean the business is growing organically. The thing you don't want is the business that's not growing organically and then the company's just buying all these other assets. It would basically mean Rezolve would be an acquisition company, and that never ends well for shareholders. That's kind of my thoughts around this situation. Now, the company previously was projecting 500 million in ARR by the end of 2026. I think that goes up to 750 million to a billion, right? If the company kept guidance at 500 million, assuming there's probably another acquisition or two at this pace, that would be a little red flaggish, right? That their growth is not accelerating. So bottom line, I want to know the organic growth is still growing, right? That they are not just diluting shareholders to buy companies that are growing. Okay? That would be deceptive to me. That would be a big problem. But at this point, I don't think that is happening, right? I think that's the fear that people have. And until we know definitively, I think that's a logical fear, right? That some people have. But again, I circle back to, why would the company voluntarily come out in December and miss estimates? That wouldn't make sense to me. Also in the news today, Scott Buck, an analyst with H.C. Wainwright and Company, has he reiterated his strong buy on the stock and reiterated his $10 price target, which was no adjustment from his prior $10 price target. Now, he was one of the first analysts to cover the stock, and He had a $4 price target on the company until they reported earnings. Then he bumped that up to $10. And you can see that here. He bumped it up from $9 to $10, actually. And then he just reiterated that today. Okay? So that's a good sign. Now, you know, it just basically means the analyst see this buyout is not really moving the needle much. You know, the negatives offset the positives offset the negatives, and the stock's a $2.50 stock. You know, a price target of $10 is 400% upside. So that's still a pretty crazy price target. Okay, now what do these other analysts do following this recent acquisition? We know it's going to be EBITDA positive, but we know Rezolve takes on a lot more debt because of this. Now, the highest price target on Rezolve is with the Maxim Group. Okay, you could see that here. Tom Ford with the Maxim Group has a buy rating on the stock. He had a $10 price target before last earnings. Now he has a $15 price target on the stock. That's the highest price target. Well, on X today, the Maxim Group LLC put this out. They said, please email rep@maximgroup.com to receive Maxim Group morning minutes / Maxim Group equity research. They say Rezolve AI Limited covered by Tom Ford CFA. So it looks like there might be some kind of change to a price target soon from Tom Ford, which again is the highest price target on Rezolve. If any of you guys are subscribed to the Maxim Group's morning minutes, let us know in the comment section if there was something specifically said on Rezolve today that is different. But from what I can tell, there was nothing said so far. But it does make me wonder if a new price target is coming. Again, it's the highest price target on Rezolve. A lowering of that price target would be not great. Obviously, if they raise that price target a little bit, that would be good. Now, today we don't have any interesting or unusual option activity, and short sellers are getting busy today. You have 3.5 million shares that are being shorted in Rezolve. Now, Rezolve still has very low short interest relative to other AI stocks at 7.25%, but that is up from some of the recent lows in the 4 or 5% range. So definitely seeing a rise in short positions in Rezolve. But I think a lot of the selling pressure has actually come from retail investors, right? Everywhere I look, retail investors are bearish on the stock. When I get it, right? The company doesn't share press releases all too often. They're saying, hey, the company's growing rapidly, but we don't know that, right? We don't know how the company is growing. And then, retail investors see the stock fall and you see this dilution and you're like, what the hell? Why are we not getting actual updates? The only updates we seem to get are dilution updates or non-event, like tech meetings and Dan Wagner going on news stations to talk about the company. But we're not getting any updates on the company. It's a little bit of a weird situation, I will admit. Sentiment on StockTwits is bullish today at 64. I'm shocked by that. Message volume is normal at 51. Look at that. Participation ratio is extremely low at 6. There's not a lot of people with their eyes on this stock. And that's still one of the things that I like about this company, right? You're not buying into a hypey situation, right? The stock is quite the opposite of that. It's suppressed. It's beaten down. And again, with my thoughts around, I just keep circling back to this. Why would the company voluntarily miss estimates with 2025 ARR before they would need or legally have to on earnings? That doesn't make any sense to me. Okay. Now the bar is higher though. You got to add 70 million to 150 million in ARR. Anything less than that is a miss. Okay. Anything less than 220 million is a miss. And that would leave me skeptical. on the company, and I would probably reduce positioning. If not, I probably wouldn't sell the whole thing, just because I want to see where this company goes in the future with the kind of tech that they have. And this acquisition, again, could be a blockbuster one for Rezolve. And really what I mean by that is like SoFi and Galileo, right? SoFi bought Galileo back in the day, I believe in 2020, and that turned out to be one of the best acquisitions in recent history for any companies, right? Galileo totally changed everything for SoFi. Like, without that acquisition, SoFi would not be the company it is today. So, there's a chance for that. There's room for that. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to share with you is this. So it's a little interesting. It says here, Rezolve AI assumed approximately 151.9 million of debt and issued 50 million in new promissory notes at a 10% interest for an acquisition. It has guaranteed this debt by pledging 100% of the acquired company's equity as collateral. So, weird. The company said, like, in the SEC filing, it said 50 million in cash and like almost 34 million in equity. But what it says here is 50 million in new promissory notes, which it's kind of like if you get a mortgage, right? You take on a mortgage. Technically, you pay the seller, right? The seller gets cash, but you have a loan out. That's basically what happened here. And the Crown Peak is the collateral for this $50 million loan, essentially. Now it says it is guaranteed this debt, again, by pledging 100% of the acquired company's equity as collateral. It says a credit agreement requires the company to maintain minimum liquidity of $10 million at all times, and an at-the-market facility is in place to sell up to 48 million additional shares. So, based on this, I don't think there was a lot of dilution that actually took place. We'll obviously see. We'll get, new details on this, on earnings, hopefully in a press release at some point as well. But taking on 50 million in promissory notes that do come due in 2027. The first one's for, I read this whole thing. The first one's for 20 million, I believe. The first tranche 20 million, second tranche 30 million. They come due December 31st, 2027, and the second one comes due on December 31st, 2027, and the first one comes due on April 1st, 2027. That's actually my birthday. Okay, so little weird, little different. Okay, but maybe the company held on to the 50 million in cash instead. So maybe the cash situation is not as bad as thought. That means Rezolve could still have $200 million in cash. Yeah, they take on more debt. The idea would be the company grows a lot by 2027. They're profitable or whatnot, and then they can more easily pay back that loan. Okay, it's kind of like if you were if you thought your company was going to grow 100%, 500% between now and 2027, paying 10% interest to help that happen would be a good idea, right? So it's a little confusing, but it does look like the company is holding on to the cash and instead took out a loan in promissory notes to purchase Crown Peak. Also mentioned, there were a lot of people talking about that reiteration of the price target today from H.C. Wainwright as like, hey, H.C. Wainwright is incentivized to say positive things on Rezolve because they own a position in Rezolve, and that's actually not true. H.C. Wainwright does not own a position in Rezolve, so they do not have a financial incentive that we know about to say anything positive on the company. You can see this right here in the Fintel 13F filings and 13G filings. There is no position from H.C. Wainwright. You can see that here. There's 0 of 0 entries. So I just want to clear that up as well before we move on. And what I want to move on to is my personal position in Rezolve. Again, You come to your own conclusions, okay? But with the stock now at $800 million market cap, and clearly the sentiment extremely bearish, you know, I'm not interested in selling the stock because of that alone. Now, if the company starts to make bad management decisions, that's something different, okay? From my perspective, that hasn't happened yet, okay? But we are kind of heading in that direction, I will admit, okay? If the ARR does not come in over 220 million, that is a massive red flag, okay? The fact the company is not sharing contracts is a massive red flag. Now, to give Rezolve the benefit of the doubt, maybe the companies they are contracting with do not want that shared with the public, okay? Because these might not be exclusive long-term contracts, okay? Companies might not want to tie themselves to an $800 million market cap AI software company, you know, when there could be something better coming, okay? There's probably some of that going on as well. That's pretty standard practice with a lot of companies, right? Companies, you sign a contract with Walmart, they don't want you going out and sharing that business everywhere, right? So there could be some of that going on. But, you know, in December, anytime now, maybe as soon as tomorrow, we're expecting to get an update to ARR. I do believe this acquisition is probably going to spur some price target adjustments. If analysts are happy about this acquisition, that could be a positive for the near term for Rezolve. It's really one of those show me kind of things. This acquisition from Crown Peak could be a blockbuster acquisition, could be a massive contributor to Rezolve's business, or it might just turn into a big headwind for the company and a big debt load. It's far too early to say that. Okay, it really depends if Rezolve can upsell existing Crown Peak clients. Okay, and I'm really curious at this point, what is the organic growth of Rezolve's business? That's the big question I have. The expectation I have is high because of the things that Dan Wagner has said. If that doesn't meet my expectations, that would be a reason to sell the stock, right? But just because Wall Street throws a fit, temper tantrum a little bit, you know, that's not a reason to sell the stock. On paper, the acquisition was not bad, especially if they did promissory notes to pay for it that don't come due until 2027, the end of 2027 for the largest one, for the $30 million tranche. That to me would seem like a smart move if the business is growing organically and they expect the company to be a lot larger in the future. To acquire an asset like that, and to hold on to their cash, like, that would be a good management decision, okay? But there's the execution risk that goes along with that. And again, is the company growing organically? That's the thing I keep coming back to. You can't make these claims that Rezolve is growing so well, and then if we get ARR that comes in below 220 million, it would basically just be acquisition growth. And that means Rezolve is basically an acquisition company, which never ends well for shareholders, ever in the history of ever, unless you're buying appreciating assets that do really well, like MicroStrategy, right? MicroStrategy is the only acquisition company I can think of that's actually done well over time. And I know the stock's come under a lot of pressure recently, but, you know, they're an acquisition company. Bottom line, they have a software business, but it's nothing. It's an acquisition company, okay? You don't want Rezolve to turn into that. Not at all. So we'll see what happens with all of that. I guess time will tell. The December ARR is the big deciding factor at this point, okay? That could make this situation look a lot better or a lot worse quickly, like with one press release. Now, in this portfolio, I have 14,250 shares, average cost $2.99. I was buying the stock in the low $2, but I started buying the stock again in the 3s and the 4s, and honestly, I didn't expect things to go how they have been, you know, so that's got that one wrong. I didn't expect Bitcoin to crash and the markets to crash and AI stocks to flip so rapidly. Like, that was unexpected. Rezolve AI still trades at a massive discount to other AI stocks, and I think part of that is, again, just people don't know of the company, and then you're kind of in the dark here. Okay, market value $36,693, currently down about 14% now, down to $5,908 in this position. In this position, I have 11,305 shares. Average cost basis $2.89. Current market value $29,167, down about $3,500 or about 11% in this portfolio. I have another 1,000 shares in Webull, another 1,300 shares in Thinkorswim as well that I don't even look at. I believe it's still positive, but they're very small positions, so doesn't really move the needle for those portfolios. So yeah, I still own the stock. Nothing has changed there. But we are in a pivotal moment for the company from my perspective, right? I don't care about sentiment. I don't care about what the markets do. I care about what the business does. And sure, acquisition could be good, but you have to have organic growth, right? You can't have Rezolve's organic growth stalling and the company's just trying to buy shit. That's never going to end well. Okay? You need the driver of the acquisitions to be the business accelerating. Bottom line. And whenever we get the ARR update, we're going to know that. At that moment, we're going to know that. Okay? I would likely still hold on to some of my position just in case the business does take off next year and all of that. But it will be a major deciding factor for me and my Rezolve position. But as of now, nothing has changed. I'm still giving the company the benefit of the doubt here until we actually get some answers. So let me know your thoughts on this down below in the comment section. I will tell you from a technical perspective, you're sitting now at what should be support at this downtrending, trend line level. I've had it marked on the charts for a while, ever since we broke out, briefly broke out above this. So you're back to that level. We'll see if that holds support around $2.50 per share. It's holding as of now. And you're kind of back to a critical level overall. You're back to some of the highs you were at in April of 2025. You're back to the gap up level on June 24th. So you're at a pretty important technical level. The RSI is at 29, so the stock is very oversold. The MACD line is still above the blue signal line, but getting closer to crossing negative again. Historically, when the yellow line breaks above the blue line, that's great. That tends to lead to rallies. But again, it depends what the company does. And yeah, Wall Street hasn't exactly loved what Rezolve has done recently. Now, I will say, I think most of the selling pressure these days is from retail investors. Everywhere I look, retail investors are bearish on the stock. Sentiment is absolute dog crap. Okay? I don't think institutions are as bearish as retail investors. According to the last 13F filings, they were buying positions. Okay? But from day one, I told you guys, retail ownership in Rezolve was 40% or more. You get retail investors that begin to sell. That's a mover for the stock. And retail sells based on price action, not based on the business. The business itself, nothing has changed besides these acquisitions. Since last earnings, right? We don't know if the business is doing better or worse since the last earnings, right? Maybe things are going great. Maybe they're not. We just don't know that. All of this selling has been broader markets related, sentiment related, and the fear of what could be. Okay, I don't sell companies based on that. I factor that into my risk analysis when I buy a stock. Okay, although I didn't expect it to get this bad, this low, ever again. Um, it's not a reason that I would look to sell a stock simply because other people don't like it as much at the moment. Okay, so let me know your thoughts on this down below in the comment section. That updated ARR might come out tomorrow. There's been a lot of talk on December 3rd, so we'll see. Let me know your kind of ARR number. Like, what do you want to see? Let me know if you're holding the stock, if you've reduced exposure, if you're bearish on the company, if you're super bullish. Let me know all of those thoughts down below in the comments section. But with that said, ladies and gentlemen, have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.